Today we're making a seeded sandwich loaf of bread in the wood-fired oven. We've been making this bread a lot lately. It's a really versatile loaf that is great for deli sandwiches and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Most of the ingredients here are pretty standard ingredients for a simple loaf of bread, which consists of flour, water, salt, yeast, and oil. The rest of the ingredients are various oats, nuts, and seeds. These are optional ingredients that are mixed in to give the loaf some extra flavor and texture. Before we start making our bread, we need to prepare our oven for bread baking. When cooking with a wood-fired oven, the oven goes through multiple stages as it heats and cools. We always fire it up to the full temperature to fully saturate the bricks with heat and then let the oven cool to the temperature that we actually want to bake at. These multiple stages offer a wide range of temperature and allow us to cook a lot of different foods. For bread, we want the oven to be in the bread stage, where the oven is about 500 degrees Fahrenheit and completely clean of coals and ashes. In this stage, the oven bakes food using radiant heat from the bricks in the dome and conductive heat from the bricks on the floor. It takes about 3 hours to go from the grilling stage to the bread stage, which coincidentally is exactly how long it takes us to make this loaf of bread. Since we need to fully heat the oven and go through multiple stages before the bread stage, we might as well use that heat to cook some food. Earlier today, during the pizza stage, we made some garlic naan, and during the grilling stage, tandoori chicken. And now we can finally start getting the oven ready for the bread stage. Immediately after the grilling stage, we want to push the coals to the edges of the oven to keep the floor from getting too hot. This will help prevent the bottoms of our loaves from getting burnt later on. I forgot to get a video of this, but this is what it looks like 2 hours later. Normally after the grilling stage, the coals would be much more active than what you see here. But we're now ready to head inside to start making our bread dough. In a large bowl, we mix 14 grams of active dry yeast, 640 grams of room temperature water, 850 grams of bread flour, 150 grams of whole wheat flour, or really whatever combination of flour we want as long as it adds up to 1,000 grams, 16 grams of kosher salt, and 30 grams of olive oil. We then mix the ingredients together in the bowl and dump it out onto the table to knead. We knead the dough for about 8 minutes until it forms a smooth ball. We add the seeds into the dough in 2 stages. We first flatten the dough and top it with half of our seed mixture. So for now, we add in 2 tablespoons of Steel-Cut Oats and 1 tablespoon each of sunflower seeds, chia seeds, and milled flax seeds. We then roll the dough up, flatten it again, and add in the second half of the seed mixture, adding in another 2 tablespoons of Steel-Cut Oats and another 1 tablespoon each of sunflower seeds, chia seeds, and milled flax seeds. This recipe is nice because it works with so many different toppings and mix-ins, and you can kind of mix in whatever you want into the bread during this stage. We've made this bread with honey, walnuts, raisins, or sesame seeds, and it always turns out great. We roll it up and then knead the dough for around 8 minutes more until the seeds are evenly distributed throughout the dough. This can be tough and kind of annoying because the seeds constantly spill out as we're kneading, but we just keep going and the dough picks up any seeds that try to get away. Next, we place the dough in a bowl, cover it, and let it rest at room temperature for 45 minutes. After the dough has risen a bit, we lightly flour the top of it, throw some flour on the table, and turn out the dough onto the table flour side down to keep the sticky side up. We flatten out the dough into a disc shape, making sure it isn't sticking to the table, and then we divide the dough into 2. We then pre-shape each half by pulling the edges toward the middle while rotating the dough until we get the dough into a tight ball. Do this for each half. Lightly flour the tops to keep them from drying out, cover it with a towel, and then let them rest for about 15 minutes. We grab our banneton baskets and we're ready to shape. We flip the dough over so the flour side is on the table and the sticky side is facing up. Flatten out the dough, fold in the edges to form a sort of trapezoid shape, and then roll the dough down, starting from the top, making sure to keep the roll tight and to seal off the last part as best as we can. I then like to lightly spray the top of the loaf with water and top it with rolled oats. Roll the dough around a bit to pick up any loose oats on the table and place the loaves into the banneton baskets, making sure the seam is facing up. We sprinkle on some flour and it's ready for proofing. We have these reusable bread bags that make great proofing bags. We place the dough in the bags and let them proof at room temperature for 90 minutes. It's now been about 2 hours since grilling in the oven, and it's about 550 degrees in there. We still have 1 hour left until our bread is ready, but we need to clean out the oven now to give it time for the temperature to regulate. To do this, we place a large stainless steel baking sheet in the middle and just shovel up as many coals as we can with our metal peel. We then place those in an ash bucket so they don't blow away, and then we use the oven brush to gather the remaining coals and ash in the doorway and shovel those out as well. Finally, we brush the oven floor and we end up with a relatively clean oven. After the cleaning process, the oven temperature has dropped to around 520 degrees. We place the door on the oven to keep the heat from escaping and let the temperature regulate a bit, and then we wait for it to drop to around 500. After about 45 minutes, the temperature in the back of the oven has dropped to about 500 degrees, the floor is about 515, and the sidewalls are about 460, which are the perfect conditions for bread baking. We then use a damp towel to wipe down the floor of the oven, which serves two purposes. It cleans the oven floor of any ash that we didn't brush up earlier, and it helps cool down the floor of the oven to help prevent burning the bottoms of our loaves. We then place a cast iron skillet in the oven because it will help us create steam later, and then put the wooden door onto the oven to seal the doorway. The oven is now completely ready, so let's head inside to get our bread. We need to score our bread before putting it in the oven. We throw some flour down and turn our dough out onto the peel and use a sharp razor to score the bread on the top and on the sides. Now let's go put these in the oven. When baking the bread, we want to make sure there is a bit of steam in the oven to keep the crust from baking too quickly and to allow our loaves to fully rise in the oven. I like to use a cast iron skillet for this, which is now searing hot from sitting in our oven for a couple minutes. We fill the skillet with a load of ice cubes and push it all the way to the back of the oven. We then slide our loaves right onto the floor of the oven and place the door on to seal the heat. These loaves will take about 24 minutes to fully bake, but we will let some steam out of the oven about halfway through. It's about 12 minutes later now, and we can already see a bit of moisture seeping through the cracks of our door, which is a sign that there's a good amount of steam in the oven. We open the door to let out some of that steam and make sure our loaves are doing well. We put the door back on and wait for the bread to finish baking. "24 minutes after putting the loaves in the oven, they are finally ready to come out. As we take the door off, you can see how much steam comes out of the oven, and the smell is incredible. We grab our metal peel to remove the loaves from the oven, and we set them aside to cool. One of my favorite things of baking loaves in the wood-fired oven is seeing the outline of the bricks on the bottom of the loaf. And there we have a delicious seeded sandwich loaf of bread baked in a wood-fired oven.